Hey everybody, welcome to Kielbasa Corner, where today I'm bringing you this national treasure from the northwest of England. And it's a good lesson in why you should always protect your sausage. I'm making the Cumberland sausage. So let's get started. To be frank, I think that sausage recipes that stick to a strict set of rules are a bunch of baloney. I think everyone should be free to play around with their sausage and not be too stiff when it comes to following a recipe. After all, what you do with your wieners in the privacy of your homes is your own business and nobody else's. That being said, this one comes with a very specific set of rules. Government appointed rules, so maybe actual laws on what can be designated a Cumberland sausage. And I'd rather not tangle with the bratwurst bobbies and end up in the pig pen, so I'm doing it by the book. And it's never a bad idea to stick to a recipe if you're making a sausage for the first time. That'll give you a good place to start when you want to create your own home recipes. So let's take a look at the ingredients for this historic hot dog. This is an all pork sausage, so I've got a mix of lean pork and some fat scraps, weighed out to get to a 20% fat content, which is the maximum allowable fat content under the regulations set forth by the Cumberland Sausage Association. It's a real thing. Straight pork shoulder will get you just about where you want to be without weighing the lean and the fat separately, so that's a really easy way to go when you're making this at home. The Cumberland also must consist of at least 80% pork, leaving another 20% for your binders and any other filler in there. And that's just fine by me because I like a nice meaty sausage, and I'm actually using a higher ratio of meat to binder. So for the sausage today, I'm using 2 kilograms of pork at 20% fat content, and let's just call that 4.5 pounds. For my binder today, I'm going to be using 200 grams of dried breadcrumbs and 20 grams of cornstarch. And you don't see that starch in a lot of home recipes out there, but most of the butcher shop recipes that I've seen do use some starch in there for a little extra binder and a little more moisture retention. Now let's take a look at our spice bill, and this is going to be a heavily seasoned sausage full of some big, bold flavor. And I am using all the approved spices in this recipe. The ratios are up to the sausage maker, which does allow for some creativity, and you can leave some of these out to create your own flavor. But adding seasoning that is not on the list is forbidden. I've seen a lot of recipes that add some coriander in here, and that sounds great, but that would be a no-no by the letter of the law. And as usual, I've weighed all my herbs and spices, but I'll put the cups and spoons recipe down in the comments as well as the percentages. So let's get started with the salt. This is 36 grams of some plain sea salt. And now I've got 3 types of pepper. I'm going to be using 10 grams of white pepper. This is 10 grams of some fresh, coarsely ground black pepper. And this is 2 grams of some cayenne, which is higher than pretty much every recipe I've seen, but I do like a little bit of bite in my sausage. And I've got 2 grams of some rubbed sage powder, which is pretty low, but that's because I'm going to be adding this fresh sage in as well. If you're not using any fresh sage, go ahead and double that to 4 grams of rubbed sage. Now I've got a scant 1 gram of some fresh ground nutmeg and the same amount of mace to bring in some of that sweet, warm spiciness. And I want to get some fresh herb in there for some color as well as that brightness. So I've got 5 grams of fresh thyme. And even though plucking thyme is one of the most miserable things I do in the kitchen, it's still a lot better than using dry thyme, at least for me. And this is 5 grams of some finely minced fresh sage leaf. Let me show you a quick and easy way to mince up some fresh sage. Just take your sage leaves, stack up 4 or 5 of them. If you go with similar sizes, it's a little nicer. Stack them all up, then roll them nice and tight. And I like to start with one slice down the middle. Keep holding those together, and then we'll run it this way real nice and fine. And then you can pass your knife a few times across those. You've got some real nice, finely minced sage. Real quick and easy. And aside from these ingredients, I'll be adding in a little bit of water to help with mixing. And you'll notice that since this is a fresh sausage, I don't need any cure. I just have to make sure I either use it or freeze it in a timely fashion. Now let's grind some meat and mix this one up. Another edict for this sausage is that it has to be a coarse ground sausage, either hand cut or ground to no finer than 5 millimeters. Now, I only have a 4.5 millimeter plate and a 10 millimeter plate, so I'm going with the 10, and that should be plenty coarse. Well, let's get our spices and our binder mixed in here. Toss that a little. That does seem like quite a bit of binder to me, but again, we're less than the allowable amount, considerably less. Now to help with mixing this up, I'll get in a little bit of water. That's just 50 milliliters. Call that a 1/4 cup, even though it's a little bit less. I'll give this a good thorough mix, but I'm not going to really mix the heck out of it like I do with a smoked sausage, because I don't want this to be as tightly bound as a smoked sausage. When you really mix it a lot until it becomes sticky, you're getting a lot of protein extraction out of the meat, and that helps firm up that bind. But with a sausage like this, I'm just going to try to get this mixed up enough that it's not a crumbly sausage. The meat's all mixed up, and I gotta tell you, it smells heavenly. I've got my soaked casings here, and as required by the law, these are natural hog casings with a minimum girth of 20 millimeters. So it looks like we're ready to lock and load and crank out this Cumbrian coil. Now, for the final rule, there are no links here. This Cumberland sausage is to be rolled into a coil, and that will be how it's presented. So you don't want to get your casings overly stuffed. The same thing goes for links. Like you can see, I kind of forced the very end of this just to get the last bit of that sausage into the casing. And when it's real tight like that, it's not that easy to coil up without breaking, or to make links for that matter. But as long as you haven't got too much in there, you can still get away with it. Now the work is done, but you don't want to tuck into these right away. You want to give them some time for the herbs and the spices to work around and mingle with everything in there, and also some time for your binders to hydrate. So I'm going to cover these up with some plastic wrap. We'll put these out into the refrigerator overnight, and we'll give these guys a try tomorrow.
Several bad puns later.
And at last, it is time to see how we did. Check out that bite. Oh my. This is a sensational sausage. I understand why you'd want to protect the recipe. Oh my. I thought I knew what this was going to taste like from the aroma when I was mixing it up. I was getting some strong sausage dressing vibes, like the kind you'd have at the holidays, and it does have some similar notes. But I didn't count on the pepper being so pronounced. The pepperiness really stands out, and combined with the fresh herbs, it gives this a strong and lively flavor. From what I've experienced with English food, this is probably a bit spicier than what you'd find there, but I'm all about that zing. You may want to cut the cayenne in half if you want to keep it closer to traditional. Now let's get into the texture. If I can break a chunk off here and get a good look. There we go. The grind is very coarse, but that rusk, the breadcrumb, it holds everything together very, very well. It's all running all around between those chunky bits of meat, and it's got a nice silky texture to it. And those two textures combined give it a remarkable mouthfeel. And I even get a hint of the taste of toasted bread. That is tremendous. If you're a sausage lover, you really need to get this into your mouth. One of the true gifts of home cooking is the ability to make and try recipes that you'd otherwise have to travel the world to taste. And I'm really happy that I made this iconic sausage. This is a recipe that I foresee coming back to again and again. It's really that good. And I hope you give it a try too, and I know you're gonna love it. Chin chin! Great sausage.